I will walk you through how it works in a moment. I just need to answer some questions that I've got Claude Code currently configured to ask me. So in this case, it's going to ask me, before I get started, it's going to ask me, hey, what is my AWS account ID? I'm going to go ahead and provide that. I have a, let's see here, I have an AWS organization right now set up, and the AWS organization currently has no infrastructure in it at all. So it's a brand new one. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my account ID, go back here, and then I'll go ahead and give it to Claude Code, and I'm going to tell it to ask me what region I'm in. I'm going to tell it I actually want East 2, and so we're going to do that, and then ask me what my GitHub repository is, and so go ahead and type that. Let's see here, and I have a GitHub repository out there for Travis Smith to-do list app. It's actually public, so if you want to go look at it, you're welcome to. So go ahead and give that. And then in this case, it's asking me, do I want to use a custom domain or an AWS provided URLs? I'm just going to use AWS URLs for now. I don't have a custom domain I want to use, so I'm just going to, do that and submit my answers. And I'm going to let it go through. It's going to first I'll plan out something. It's also going to use something that I currently have set up. I currently have skills set up in Claude Code, and these skills are particularly things that are preferences that I have, and they allow me to tell it like, hey, this is how I want you to handle building Terraform. This is how I want you to handle like building a CI/CD pipeline. I also have other skills I might create, like tell it how to, if I'm doing coding, I might tell it I want it to use like test-driven development. And I'm going to keep going here. In this case, it's going to ask me, what is your Terraform organization name? And I'm going to go ahead and give it that. I also created a Terraform organization, and right now it's currently empty. There's nothing in it. There's no workspaces. There's no projects or anything. But it is just Travis Personal Organization. So I'm going to go ahead and give it that name and put that in there. And then ask me, what email should I receive monitoring alerts and billing notifications on? So part of my Terraform skill is set up is that it actually will go out there and try to create monitoring for me. It'll try to, it has a preference that I have in place of like, hey, I want to make sure that I have a billing threshold of $5. I don't want anything billed over $5 in AWS. And so it allows me to email me and then do that. So in this case, I can provide it now. So I'm just going to give it an email address to use. And I don't know if we'll get far enough where I'll see that, but I'm going to tell it I have a number of email addresses I use. In this case, I'm going to use one of my versions. So, and go ahead and submit the answers. And so now what's going to do is it says, hey, it has all the information, and it's going to go ahead and start creating the infrastructure and starting with the directory structure and modules. And so while this is running, I'm actually going to show you how this application runs locally. So there's currently an API folder out there, and there is a web folder out there. If you look at the README, and let's see if I can make this bigger here. I had the same trouble as earlier. I'm going to make it bigger looking at the code way. But basically, it just tells you it's basically a full stack application that manages to-do lists with user authentication. If I go ahead and run this, for example, if I go into the API folder and I get that up and running, I can use nvm use and then go ahead and npm install here. None of this is currently set up. I've never done anything with it yet. So then go ahead and do, I believe, let's pull up the README for the API just so I can remember exactly what the commands are to start it up. So it looks like I have, oh yeah, Docker Compose. I have it set up for Docker. So I'll go ahead and hit Docker Compose up, and it's going to go ahead and get the app up and running. It's going to start with the API. And I'm going to go ahead and get another terminal going here. Another thing I wanted to do is I really want to make sure that I'm keeping this under an hour. So I'm going to start a timer because I want to make sure we're clocking this here. So get that going. We're a little late on that. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and then jump into my web folder in a different terminal and get that going here. And nvm, or let's see, npm install. I know there's shortcut commands. I like to type stuff out so you guys understand exactly what I'm writing. I'm not using aliases so you don't know what they are. But if I can do npm start, that'll get the web part going. Then the API, looks like the API is there. So before I can use the API, I first have to run migration. So do that. We'll do run db migrate, and that'll get the database set up, and then I'll seed the data. All right, cool. So now if I go ahead and I can go actually open this up, and we'll open that up in a... All right, so this is what the to-do list actually looks like. It is right now, if I log in, I believe it's email, or I think the user at example.com, and then password, type password 123. All right, apparently I had that wrong. So let me go to the README, and we'll see what the README says. For the web, okay. So it looks like it is back user example, so I must have fat fingered something here. So I'll just go ahead and paste that. Okay, well, apparently my API is not working. This is, let's see here, make sure my API actually works. Did I do anything else here? No, I got my instructions. Oh, I forgot to run dev, duh. Forgot to actually start up the, I think, run dev. Okay, so that'll get my API up and running. And while this is running, I've had, if Cloud Code is currently still running, it's still doing its thing. It's going to take about probably somewhere between 6 and 9 minutes. And what it's doing is it's going through and it's setting up my infrastructure, modules and everything. And I'm gonna walk you through this. I'm gonna show you what it's doing. But in the meantime, I'm gonna keep running, and then I'm gonna show you the actual app and what it does. So I can see that it's actually running there. So we're gonna go ahead, and now I'm gonna try to log in. There we go. Okay. So in this case, this is what the app is. It's a simple to-do list management app. So I can add in anything I want to this and do that. This is it running locally. We're not going to focus on it running locally. I just wanted to make sure you understood what it actually does. But it also has a light and dark mode. So this is what we expect it to look like when we get it running in AWS. So I'm going to close that. We're not going to focus on that for the moment. So I do want to just show you that I go back to Terraform. Terraform, this is an empty organization. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. I don't have any magic up my sleeves. I'm not like how already have stuff set up. I don't have any infrastructure set up. So I can look at the Terraform workspace. There's nothing there. I can go to AWS and I can look, and for example, I can show you IAM, and I can show you that there's no roles, custom roles that I've created. There's no identity providers. If you go to EC2, I don't have any Bastion hosts already existing. And I'm focusing on Ohio right now. So then, or ECS as well. We have nothing in ECS, no clusters. And then I can go to RDS as well. And I can show you there's no databases currently. And just for giggles here, let's go to S3. There's no S3 buckets. Okay, so anyways, that's the state of AWS right now. The other thing is that if I go to GitHub, my GitHub project right now, I only have the one commit. I don't have any other history other than the initial project files. If you look at my GitHub actions, I have no actions currently configured. It's never been used. As well as if I go to settings and I look at like my environments. I also have no environments here. And I have no other secrets or repository secrets set up for this. So I just want to let you know that that's the current state of things that I'm working with. We're going to come back to all of this after we let Claude Code do its thing. So going back to Claude Code, first I'm going to kill my local running version. I don't need this anymore. There we go. And, oh, okay, so I went too far. Okay, so I don't need the other one. And okay, so now at this point, what happened is Claude Code looks like it finished what it was doing. And I will tell you that I have done this probably 4 or 5 times now just to test it out. And because we're using AI, it's not going to be the same experience every time. It's going to be different. And my skills that I have set up with Claude Code are right now set up in a way that it's going to identify certain preferences that I have, but it's not going to tell it, hey, do it exactly like this every time. And I'll show you what those skills look like later on when we have more time. But with the right now, what it did is it went through and created all this stuff. And then at the end, what it did is it told me, okay, I've completed setting up the AWS infrastructure, and I created the CI/CD pipeline. Here's a summary of what was created. And it shows me that it has infrastructure. It shows me what everything is set up. It looks like it's set up Postgres, ECS, Fargate cluster, S3 bucket, Bastion, our secret manager, Bastion host so that I can access it later on. And then also an ECR repository and some CloudWatch alarms and budget alerts. It also set up a QA environment. And then what it did is it gave me some scripts that I can run so that I can actually set up the actual connection for between AWS and GitHub, as well as the connection between Terraform and AWS. And then it also set up some scripts so that I can actually set up the variables that I need. And I did this because I wanted to use a CLI for Terraform, GitHub, and AWS so I can speed up this process and get this done quickly. The other thing it did was it also set up a workflow for me, a CI/CD pipeline, and then it told me, like, hey, what is the order the pipeline's going to run in? It tells me it's going to run the linting, testing, and build in parallel, and it's going to run my end-to-end test. And that's the thing I didn't mention. All of the API and the web both have it's like the web has a health end-to-end test, and then I have also some additional tests in here for the services. I have an API test. So I have tests in here. There's not a ton of tests. This is still a to-do list application. It's not massive, but there are tests in here, and so I expected to run those tests. This is going to be what I would expect a normal production level application to do in a CI/CD pipeline, and actually run those tests. But then it also tells me what it's going to do in the end. It's going to push to ECR, it's going to update ECS, and it's going to basically set up CloudFront. So it's going to get our deployment done. And then it tells me, hey, run these steps in a certain order. And so we're going to do that. We're going to follow this exactly how it is. Now, we'll tell you that we're going to commit some sins along the way. And the reason we're going to commit some sins is because the point of this talk is not to show you how to review code. It's not to show you that, hey, you need to, review all the code that AI creates. You should already know that. So you should not be saying, oh, I need to go look at the code. We're not going to look at each one of these, but I will tell you that if you look in the infrastructure folder and go under modules, I can look and see, and I can go into, like, for example, the VPC, and I can look at the code that it created, and I can see everything it's set up here. If I really wanted to, I can go by line and do this. For time purposes, we're not going to go through all that. But I will tell you that. So we're going to commit some sins here, and we're just going to move forward and then basically trust that Claude Code did a good job of creating this. The same thing is true about our CI/CD pipeline. It created a lot of stuff in here, and it did that, and it's very long. We're not going to go through all that. So we're going to do a little bit of vibe coding in the sense, and I don't normally want to do that, but I will say we're going to go ahead and just run this. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's just see what we can do here. Run the first command it tells us, and go into terminal and get it going here. So now it's going to say, all right, let's see. It's going to enter my account ID, which I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't already know that because I gave it to it earlier. But let's go ahead and give it to it anyways. So I'll go ahead and get my account ID, which I guess I got to just hit enter. It looks like I already had it. So that was a stupid thing for me to look at there. Same thing. I'm just going to hit enter. It already knows it. And the same thing. So, okay. So now it's telling me that it looks like it set up the OIDC connector. So go ahead and let that keep going. Now it's going to set up a role, and it's setting up a GitHub Actions role in AWS. And now it's going to go set up the Terraform OIDC connector. So it's getting that. And now it's going to go set up a Terraform Cloud role in AWS. And I'm going to let it do that. Okay, so now it's done with that. It does tell me what the ARNs are so that I can use them later. But then it says, all right, now it said next steps, run this script. So let's go ahead and do that. And same thing, count ID. Okay, QA environment, we do want QA. And US East 2, yep. Oh, in this case, it already gave me my ARN. It's never actually done that before the previous times I've ran this, so that's good. And then, all right, in this case, it's asking me if I want to enter a JWT secret or just enter to generate one. This is another situation where I would not want, I probably actually wouldn't want the AI tool to do this for me at all. I don't like having secrets like this, something that the AI model knows about at all. So I would actually prefer to probably manage it myself and maybe go update it in like Secret Manager myself and not go through the AI tool. But just for this purposes, there's also going to be a SIN that we're going to work through today for this purpose. So the same thing with the database password. I don't normally want to go through the AI model to generate that or even be aware of it. That would be bad practice in my opinion. So in that case, we're going to commit that SIN, and I would normally go update that myself, or I would use auto-generating password, username, and credentials for the database. In this case, it's enter my alert email, billing alert email. Yes, cool. All right, so now it's gone through creating that, and I'm just going to take a quick break here. I can see that. I can see, okay, I got the information. It's setting up the workspace ID. So it set up a Terraform workspace. It also set up the environment credentials as well as Terraform environments. So now if I go to, we go to Terraform and I refresh, I should be able to see that I have a workspace here, which I do. And I can, if I go into this workspace, it has never ran before, so it's acting like it's never ran. I go to variables, I can see that I have alert email set up, I have my JWT secret DB password. This is all set up pretty well actually for what I was expecting. And then I also have the certain AWS parameters that really have to be there in order to work with AWS. There's a couple settings though I'm guessing it didn't set that I'm going to go look at and want to make sure it does. I'm guessing it's not connected to version control. So this is something that's a little bit different. I found that I've had to do every time instead of having the Claude code do it. So I had to say click version control. I already have my personal project here, so I'm just going to connect it to my to-do list app. And I already have a working directory set up. That's good. And I'm going to tell it to use the main branch just in case it doesn't try to do that. And then another thing that I like to do is I like to make sure it only focuses on the infrastructure changes. I don't want it to make changes if I'm updating GitHub. So I'm going to give it a path or pattern to focus on. And then we're just going to hit save. And that's something that I've had to kind of manually do myself. I haven't been able to let the tool do that. So at this point, before I try to run anything, I'm going to have to make a commit. So let's go back to this and go ahead and push the changes. So I'm actually going to leave this open. We're going to go to another terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to say git status here, and I'm just going to add the infrastructure directory. We're not going to add anything else. So commit, and I got some old commit messages here, so I'm just going to hit add infrastructure. This is also probably a SIN. You probably want to add a little more detail about why you're doing this and what you're doing, but we're going to commit that SIN. And I can see everything that I've added here and included. And then I'm just going to go ahead and push. Let's see. Okay, so that's going to, the infrastructure is at least pushed to the repo now. I can go to repo. I can see the infrastructure is there. If I go to this, I'm guessing that the runs, because it's never been ran before, I'm going to have to kick it off myself. So let's go ahead and start a new plan. And I'm using Terraform Cloud because I like to be able to see actually what it's doing and see more detail. I find this to be a little easier for me to understand rather than going through like the CLI. But I'm going to go ahead and let it go through planning here, and we'll see. It's going to basically go through identifying what all infrastructure it needs to create. And it's going to be a lot. In this case, it's 56 items that it has to create, and I guarantee that it will not succeed in the first time. If it does, I'll be really surprised. But it's going to go ahead and set up, looks like it's going to set up the Bastion information, security groups, ECS, IAM, CloudWatch, all the secret manager, all that stuff. So let's just go ahead and get it going. And let it start going there. It's going to, the longest part, the part that takes the longest is going to be setting up RDS. and getting that going. So while that's running, and when it fails, we'll figure out what it failed and come back to Claude code and look at it. But I'm going to let it go for a second here, and it's going to start creating the infrastructure. In the meantime, let's go back here. So in order to actually do the next step, and I'm going to go back to what the Claude code told me to do. It told me to say, hey, go run the Terraform workspace, and then push your code to commit or GitHub, connect workspace to Terraform Cloud, and then run Terraform apply. Did all that. So steps 1 through 4 are done. The next step is going to be configuring GitHub variables. But before I do that, I actually have to get some information from the infrastructure to set that up. So I'm not ready to do that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just at least get that ready for me here. And we'll go ahead and get that entered in there. And then once I have that information, I can enter it in. But I need to wait for the infrastructure to be done. Let's go ahead and check on it. I did see there's something that it did fail. So, but a lot of stuff is succeeding. That's a good sign. And things that take the longest are definitely the database, as well as the internet gateway, or the NAT gateway, as well as the load balancer. So, Bastion host failed. Okay, so we'll wait for those. And then, in the meantime, what I do want to show you is what I have currently configured for skills. I don't know if anybody's used skills in Claude Code. Just a quick raise of hands. Who has used skills? Okay. Well, for those of you who haven't used skills or are not familiar with what I'm talking about, skills are essentially like more context that you can essentially give Claude Code about how to do things a certain way. The stuff that I think of it in terms of, if I've been a software engineer for a long time, if I had like somebody who's new to software development and I was pairing with them and they were we were pair programming and I was essentially the navigator and they were driving, it would be something I would be like kind of helping guide them towards, okay, do things maybe, think about doing it this way or think about that way, and if this comes up, maybe do that. And then like I would be trying to help Claude Code do that and think of it like, hey, how can I get Claude Code to think in a way that if it does something that it uses these skills to do that. And I usually break down the skills into certain like things like, for example, one skill I might have is I really want you to focus on test-driven development. Well, I found that with Claude Code saying I want to do test-driven development is not always easy for it to understand because there's a lot of opinionated opinions out there about how to do test-driven development and what's the usage of test-driven development. I prefer to give Claude Code examples of like how I would like it to do test-driven development or how I would like maybe tests to be written a certain way. And so you can actually build up these skills with certain information, and then you can also provide Claude Code with examples of what you want the test to look like. And so for example, is one of the things I have a couple of skills set up, and the skills in this case are set up. I'm just going to show you the one that I have for Terraform, AWS infrastructure, and I will make this bigger if I can here. So all this ends up being is just a markdown file, and it's something that you can set up. I don't know if there's a limit on how many skills you can set up, but you can set up a skill, and what Claude does is it basically will notice if you prompt something, it will say, oh, I see that you're trying to set up Terraform. Let me go find that skill and use that skill to drive what I need to do next. And so what I've done is I've tried to make this a very generic skill so that I can work with multiple projects, and I may not always know if the project has or needs a certain thing. So I've written it in a way to say, hey, for example, one thing I tell is that in AWS, I don't want any I do need to have like an IAM role with trust policy for Terraform Cloud. I also make sure that I want to connect through OIDC, and I tell it certain things that I expect to happen. I also set up, I have certain scripts that I've given it examples that I want it to use, and to say, hey, if you're going to go create, for example, an OIDC shell script to help me, use this one as an example, and I have an example script out there in my skills area so that I can tell it, hey, do it this way every time, and that way it has something to look at. I found that as working with Claude Code or most AI tools, if you can give them examples, you're going to have a lot better experience. Other things that I tell it is that I always want to be prompted before, if I'm going to be setting up Terraform, I want you to ask me for this information instead of, assuming any information or guessing. And then all the things. I do the same thing with, GitHub Actions or GitHub CI/CD pipeline. And technically you could do this with a lot of, and if you want to do this for Circle CI, you want to do this for maybe some other CI tool that you use, or you wanted to just give it more generic information on CI/CD, then you can do that. But this is basically what I told it. I really like to have, I like my pipelines to run in a certain order. I also like to make sure that, when starting up the end-to-end test, that you make sure the application server started before you run the end-to-end tests. Those are things that I've had to actually run, or tell Claude Code would go build a script, a CI/CD pipeline, and then it would forget to actually start the server up before it tried to run the end-to-end test. And I kept having to go fix that myself. Well, I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell Claude Code just to remember to do this. And now it's been doing a really good job at remembering that, so I haven't had to really tell it or fix that problem anymore. And all that does is just speed things up. So I'm going to go back and see if refresh this and see how our infrastructure is going. This is probably going to be the longest part that I'm going to have to wait for, is the infrastructure setup. And it looks like we're still setting up CloudFront, and let's see if I actually got the database set up. Database instance is still going. So let's go check on the database and see what state it's in. Okay, so it's backing up. So it's on the back 9 of what it needs to do. So it's hopefully going to be done pretty soon. And we're doing good on time right now. It's only 6:30, so we're 30 minutes into this, and we've got most of the infrastructure set up. After we basically get this set up and we get the infrastructure issues done, then we'll go through actually configuring GitHub Actions and getting that the deployment going so that it'll actually deploy everything out to AWS. While we're waiting for the infrastructure, I've talked really fast and I moved through things really quickly. Does anybody have any questions right now? Awesome. If you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or stop me in the middle of things. I'll be happy to answer them. I've tested this out a couple different times, and every single time I get a different experience with using Claude Code to build up the infrastructure and CI/CD pipeline. This is something that I typically, if I'm actually building a production level application and working through this, I'm not going to try to get it done in an hour. First off, so I'm like, this is not my goal with every project. It's definitely something I'm going to be a little more thorough and actually go through this more. But I just wanted to really demonstrate in this presentation today of how powerful you can get to have Claude Code set up a lot of this stuff for you and what it can do very quickly. One thing I do want to mention is that when I'm using Claude, I do something that's a little bit different than other people. Let me make this bigger here. When I'm using Claude, I started up using this command right here. And it is dangerously skip permissions, which sounds really bad. But here's what I'll say. It is not as bad as it sounds. And if I didn't do this, what would happen is I would find myself in a situation where Claude would continue to ask me, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And I found myself in a lot of cases where I'd say, yes, go ahead and do it. Yes, yes. And I would just constantly be hit yes or tell it to remember those directions later on. And I have found that it ended up just slowing me down, and I rarely had an answer that wasn't yes. So I had found that the only times that I really didn't want it to do certain things is that I didn't want it to ever commit or push for me. And so I found that it's actually easier for me to use this command to start up Claude instead of just doing the normal just Claude without this. And because it allowed me to, one, move faster, and I'd get to a point where I had all my code was written. If I needed to interrupt Claude at any point, I could. I was usually monitoring what's going on, so I could stop it and fix something. But other time, I would just let it go, and I would come up with code, and then I would basically go review it, and then I would determine if I needed to make changes to it, or I needed to have Claude do something different, or if I just needed to throw it away entirely. But what I did, in order to avoid it committing and pushing, I basically updated my preferences in my global settings for Claude to tell it, like, hey, don't ever commit or push for me. Like, no matter what, no matter, whatever you think, don't do that. And basically I found that it was easier for me, instead of babysitting Claude, it was easier for me to be more defensive about what I wanted Claude to do long term. And so that would allow me to get faster at using Claude without having to feel like I was constantly hitting yes for stuff that I already knew the answer, or that I was okay with. So it's up to you how you want to use Claude, but that's just so you know, that's why I do it this way. And I've gotten to the point where I've gotten all my preferences in Claude set up to the point where I trust a lot of what it's doing, because I'm pretty confident in what it's doing. Okay, so it looks like we're done running the infrastructure, and I can see that there's problems here. I can see that it's having trouble with a couple of things, and saying that the volume of 8 size is smaller than the snapshot. Okay, 30 gigs. Okay, so it needs to update the gigs, and then it updates the DNS. So I'm just going to make this real simple. I'm going to have Claude fix this for me. I'm not going to spend, I want to make this quick, so I'm just going to paste in the error, send it to Claude, tell Claude to fix it. Okay, and so it's going to tell me, hey, I need to fix 2 errors. The bash and AMI requires at least 30 gigs. And the ARN suffix needs to come from the actual ARN, not the DNS name. So I'm going to let it do that. And then what I'll do is I'll have to run the infrastructure again and get that done. This should be the last bit of it. So let's see. It's updating, getting some output here with the ARN. And then update the QA. All right, so let this run. Okay, cool. So now it fixed it. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and see here. Git status, git, and then I'm just going to add infrastructure. We're not going to look at it. We're just going to trust it right now and commit that sin. So, and another sin, I'm not going to give a really great descriptive commit message. I'm just going to keep it simple. All right, so now go back to Terraform, and it's going to start up a new run for me. Let's go to our runs. Plan is queued. Okay, cool. So let's let it queue up here, and then I'll apply that, and hopefully that'll be done. And then at that point, we'll have our information that we need to configure GitHub. All right. So there we go, just adding a couple things here. All right, go ahead and confirm and apply, confirm plan. Let this finish. I'm going to go look at, make sure the database is available. That's good. I want to make sure just everything's looking good. I'm going to go check ECS. And then looks like I have a cluster ready. Looks like it has services. The tasks are currently failing. I'm not really sure. It looks like they're trying to run and they're currently failing. So I'm not going to focus on that right now. There we go. We'll come back to that when we actually have something pushed to them. Right now we don't. We just have a. I'm guessing there's an empty task definition. And then let's see. I do want to go to IAM and let's look at what roles were created. So if we go to roles, I can see that there was a. Make this hopefully bigger for you here. There was a GitHub Actions role, which is what connecting from GitHub. There's a Terraform Cloud role, which is connecting from Terraform. But then we have a couple other roles that it created for the Bastion host and the ECS task scheduler or task execution. And I don't know if you're familiar with what a bastion host is, for anybody who's not, it's basically what I would want if I wanted to securely connect to my database, rather than making my database publicly accessible. So my preference is to always keep the database not publicly accessible, and then use a bastion host to connect SSH into it if I need to. So then if I go to, like, for example, secret manager, I'm guessing is where my secrets were created. So I do have some secrets here. It looks like the database password is created and JWT secret. And normally I would want it to create the private key for the bastion host inside of here, but it might have created it in SSM. So let's go look and see if it created there as well. So I can go to parameter store. I don't know if it created anything there. Let's go to, so it doesn't look like it's using parameter store. So, okay, so I'm not going to worry about the bastion host now, but it would be something that I would want to basically make sure that I can use later on. So go back to ECS. Let's go back to see if this run's done. Okay, the run is done. And this is all the information now I need to be able to set up GitHub. And so now I'm going to go back to my GitHub script, and I'm going to run this, and I'm guessing it's going to ask me for a lot of this information. So let's go ahead and run this, and it's going to ask me what the QA environment is. Yep, we do want that. Count ID, yes. USEs2, yep. Okay, enter manually, fetch from Terraform, requires TL, yeah, let's go with 2. I don't want to have to enter that manually. Do you want to enter values manually or fetch from Terraform outputs? Requires, so I'm a little confused by what it's doing here, but I'm going to see if I can get it from Terraform. Okay, so inbound request. Okay, let's go back. Let's try that again, and let's just enter it manually this time and see. We might need to. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there we go. ECR repository URL. So I'm going to go ahead and just go back here and see if we can find the URL. And this is a lot of kind of manual copy and paste. I haven't really found a good way to do this. Cluster name looks like it already. That's what it's using, and that's what it is. So we're going to leave it like there. Service name. Check that. It looks like it is in fact that. So task execution role ARN. So let's go find that. That is right here. All right. I'm just copy and pasting those. Task role ARN. Task family, I believe that is right. It is. So go ahead and enter. ECS, it's doing a lot for me, which I'm happy with. I have other times where I've had to enter every single thing in myself, and I didn't care for that. So you guys can hear me right now, I'm hoping. Okay. Let's see, Cloud Front Distribution. Let's go get that ID. And just so you guys are aware, I'm planning on blowing this away when I'm done, so I'm not going to keep this around. So if you're trying to take notes and it'll mess with it later, no, it's not going to be around very long. I do want to go actually open up a browser for that, because I will eventually need to hit that. Right now it says access denied, so we're going to leave that. Let's see, let's go to this. What we need the database host. I've had times where it has made this secret or sensitive and hasn't given it to me. Sometimes I've had to go look it up. Other times it has. So JWT secret ARN. Where is that? And all this is doing is configuring the GitHub actions or the GitHub repository environment so that we don't have to go and set this up manually ourselves. And this is, we're setting up the QA environment this way because eventually down the road I might want to set up a actual production environment. So it would just be easier to set up a QA environment the same way. So I'm actually going to copy this error message, and we're going to quit out of that. And I'm actually we're going to make this super simple. I'm going to go hit Claude code fix this. And then it's going to say, oh, there's an issue setting variables. This happens when environment creating call hasn't fully propagated yet. Let me update the script. Some delay after creating the environment, so let's do that. And see if it can fix it itself. If it can't fix it itself, the backup is that I'll have to go manually set these up in GitHub myself. I don't really want to do that, but I will if I have to. So, and run the script again. In this case, I actually don't want to run the script again, because I know if I run the script again, I'm going to have to enter in those values again. So I'm actually going to tell Claude to do this. You run the script and enter the values I pasted. So I'll let it do that. And the advantage to this is that it saves me time, and if it runs into an issue, it'll fix the issue itself. So I'll let it run, do that, and let's see if it can get done here. Oh, it's still running into issues. Is that issue because of the wait timer string? Let me fix the script. Okay. All right. So let's see. It's finding. I'm just going to try to run the script again. Let's see if it succeeds. Okay, CI/CD pipeline is now ready. Great. Let's go look at our GitHub. First off, it's not currently ready because I haven't actually pushed anything, but I can see there's an environment out there. I can look in here and I can see that there's all these things are out there now, which is good. I also want to see if there's any repository secrets. There's repository secrets to AWS role ARN. That's a good sign. If I go to add actions, there's nothing in there yet. I haven't actually pushed those. So I'm going to actually go do that. So let's go to the next step is I'm going to see status, and we're going to just add the GitHub folder and commit, add the CI/CD pipeline, and let's go ahead now and now this will actually start up GitHub Actions, or it should. Workflows, build and deploy, it's there. There we go. Okay, took a second. All right, so GitHub Actions are going to recognize that there's a pipeline here, and now it's actually going to start it up. Let's go see what the pipeline looks like. I can make this bigger here. Okay, so first thing it's going to do is going to try to run both the API linting and the web linting, and as well as run the tests for the API and web. And it's going to do all this stuff. We're just going to let it run for a second. I don't expect this to succeed the first time. It's likely going to fail, and we're going to probably run into a couple of issues we'll have to fix. But we're doing okay on time. I got about 10 minutes, so we're going to see if we can get this done in 10 minutes. Anybody have any questions so far?
Did your skills tell it exactly what infrastructure you want to deploy in?
I'm
using ECS versus something else that was your API.
I apologize. Can you say that again?
Yeah. Did your skills know exactly what AWS infrastructure you wanted your APIs hosted in?
When I set up the skill, I typically I don't want to actually like tell it like, hey, I want you to use ECS for an API container. I usually want maybe if I want to give it direction, I would actually give it in the prompt. I would tell it like, hey, I'm using this tech stack. I want to set up this a certain way. Claude Code, if I don't give it that direction, a lot of times it'll ask me, but it'll also lean sometimes on what I've done in the past. I have certain preferences that I've told it, like, hey, if you're gonna set up an API, then I would like to set up usually with Fargate ACS. If I'm gonna do a front end, I would typically want to use like a CloudFront static S3 bucket. But if I want to give it different directions on how to do it, I would probably tell it in the initial prompt how to do it, and it would ignore my preferences.
Those preferences, were those in your repo, MD, or were those in skill though?
I don't typically use a repo Claude file. I don't generally find those useful. I find that most of my preferences are either in the skills themselves or in my global Claude file. So in my global Claude file, I have a lot more information too that I tell it on like how to, that are like, for example, the test-driven development and refactoring and code smells to look for. I tell it in my global settings what to do with those.
Do you distribute that global settings to other people on your team?
Not in a way that I'm like, we're sharing it in one place and just all referencing it. More like they don't have a whole lot of experience with Claude code, and like, here's a good starting point. You know, pick what you want to use out of it, and then, you know, use it if you want to or don't. But that's the only way I usually share it, is if they're like, hey, you're doing a great job. How can I do what you're doing? And I'll let him like, well, this is what I do. You start with this if you want to. Use it.
Distributing your skills to other people through a plugin or a marketplace?
No, not yet.
So you're just using the skills yourself for your own development?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet. It might be a good idea for me to essentially take those skills and put them out there and like a repo or something for people to use, because they're likely to be valuable to other people. I just haven't gotten that far yet. All right, so it looks like we are failing. I'm going to refresh this, make sure. I think the linting is still, okay, so let's go to our end-to-end test and see what's happening end-to-end test. I'm actually going to make this smaller because I'm having trouble seeing it myself. So it looks like it's going to have trouble running this, and I found this to happen a couple of times in the past. So I'm going to go ahead, we're just going to copy this here and see if we can get Claude code to fix it. I'm guessing the problem is that the API is, or the web server is not actually set up yet. But when we're trying to run the end-to-end test, but let's go ahead and see if we can see what it sees in that case. It's failing because they're trying to connect to local host, but the web app isn't being served yet. So yeah, so I'm guessing that's what's happening. It's not actually ready yet. So disables it in CI mode. I'm guessing that this is going to have to, we're going to have to change the node environment variable, but we'll see what it realizes here. Okay, it looks like it's adding a base URL. Okay, starts web server and that. Base URL waits the server. Okay, how's Claude doing? Not interested in right now. 3, sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and status git add. Okay, so let's go ahead and it's going to kick off a new action. Let's see if we can make that, get past that or get into another failure. And how are we doing on time? We got 7 minutes here. Let's see if we can knock this out. There's a number of other skills that I haven't actually set up yet that I'm planning on setting up. For example, I mentioned like tester and development. I want to give it a certain skill. All the information I provide related to tester and development and how I like it to do a certain thing a certain way is in my global settings, but I'd like to probably set that up in an actual skill because it's a global thing. It doesn't mean I always need test-driven development at global level because like this, I don't need test-driven development for this. It shouldn't be considering that and just adding more context when it's not needed. So if I can only use it for when I'm actually doing development, that would be more helpful. The same thing with, I have certain ways I like to do refactoring. I'm very, very focused on refactoring according to like Martin Fowler and how he does it and how the different code smells that he focuses on. And so I definitely give a lot more detail about what refactoring code smells I'm looking for, as well as different like project smells as well, and how I evaluate that. So that is something that I probably create as a separate skill just for that. I just haven't set those up yet. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go through creating the end-to-end test here. I'm just going to watch it because I'm interested to see if it actually succeeds here. installing the, looks like we have the, it's going to install the Playwright browsers. That's another thing. I have certain things I like to tell. Is like, hey, if you're going to, when I originally built this application, I told it like, hey, I want it to build end-to-end tests. And one of my preferences that I like to use is Playwright usually for the end-to-end test. And so it automatically knew that according to my global config. So, all right, so starting up the API server. Starting up the web server now, and hopefully get started up here. Run the end-to-end test. Let's see if it succeeds. And it looks like it did. Good. Cool. So let's go back to that. And now it's going to go through deployment. And we're going to see if it deploys. It's going to go ahead and push the ECR image. And then while it's doing this, when when it gets to the point where it's actually updating ECS, I'm actually going to watch, because I want to actually watch the task it's doing, and actually see like, hey, that it's actually running, because the API tasks should actually start up and it should go to a healthy state. The S3 bucket, I usually don't have any problems with. It's just using CloudFront for that case, but it is going to register the task definition here. So. All right, so it is waiting for ECS. So let's go ahead and just go to check out what ECS is doing. And let's see if we can kind of monitor this a little bit. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, so I can see that it is provisioning this. It is still using the 1, which means that it hasn't realized that there's a new task definition out there yet. So let me make that bigger so you guys can see it. So I can see that it's using task definition 1, which is the original one I started with. I expect there to be there it is, task definition 2. That's what I'm expecting to happen. So now I can see it's provisioning this, and we're going to see if it actually activates and runs. If it does, that'll be great, and we'll hopefully see in the logs that it actually started up the API and ran the migrations. So go ahead and refresh this. All right, so it is running. We're going to look at the logs here and see, and we can see that it is running. It ran the migration, server is started. It's actually better than I expected. I was expecting it to probably fail, but let's go to see if we can go back to that task, and let's make sure it actually gets healthy. I want it to be healthy, so I can see that the first one's healthy. Let's see if the second one gets healthy. If the second one gets healthy, then that's a really good status. That means that we should be in good shape. Let's see if we get there. There it is. It's healthy. Okay, so let's go back to our CI/CD pipeline here, and it has not deployed the web to S3. So if I go refresh this page, still nothing there. So I have to wait for that to happen. So we're going to wait here, and let's see that if it actually realizes that it's healthy. It's going to be checking it, polling it every now and then. We'll let that finish. But providing that it does notice that, which it should, then it'll deploy to S3, and then site should be up. And then the true test will be if we can actually register a user and log in. Because just because it's on S3 doesn't mean it's actually working. In the meantime, what I can do is there is this actual endpoint is, let's see if we can. I'm just going to wait, sorry. I was going to try to run a curl command to make sure it's running, but we're just going to let this finish. There it is. Okay, now it's deploying S3. Cool. All right, so our deployment pipeline is green. Good. Let's see what happens now when I go to the page. Cool. So we are deployed, and I got that done in a minute to spare, but let's go ahead and I just want to register a user. Let's see if I can log in. So we're just going to do password. All right, that's a bad sign. All right, so yeah. Okay, looks like we are having trouble posting, but I will tell you that I would probably just investigate that. It would take another 5 minutes. I'm not going to make you guys wait to go through that again, but this is essentially like I would want it now. It looks like the issue is really that the API is being blocked somehow. I would probably post this back to Claude. Claude would get it figured out. I would post it again, run it at pipeline. It would be good. I've done this about a few times now, and this error that I'm seeing here is not uncommon. So this is probably the closest I can get to in an hour. So that's it. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Do you make use of any MCP servers within your workflow?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
MCP servers, do you make use of any of the MCP servers within your workflow?
I have not, no. We have a MCP server at our company that we use that we built ourselves. It's so that we can use it as a gateway between these AI tools and our internal ecosystem. I wouldn't use it in this particular case. I would use it for more like if we were, I could actually show you an example. We don't, our company way we use things. So for example, if I work at a company called Shift, and if I use like Claude AI, we have an MCP server that I have configured. So for example, if I tell it to say, hey, tell me the README for our Shift MCP server. It actually has access to our GitHub repositories through that, and it has a custom connector that we have set up. And it's basically going to look, and it's going to use our connector, providing I still have it set up. Okay, yep, and so it actually, it's actually using this, but we actually have it set up through our, let me see if I have a connector here. Okay, I actually don't have the custom connector configured right now. Anyways, short answer is no, I'm not doing this for this development, but I have used MCP servers for other things I'm doing, and we also have developed them internally at our company, so, but yeah. Yeah.
Your examples doing like a new greenfield project, how about dropping Claude into an existing project? Is there anything different in training Claude, or have you done something like that?
So on a greenfield project?
Yeah, this is an example of a greenfield kind of project. You start from zero.
Yep.
What about how would you add Claude, or what would you change, or have you brought Claude into an existing repo that was already developed by humans, and have you utilized it to start doing some, integrating it into your existing repos?
I do actually do that probably pretty often. So, for example, is we do some work with clients where we do rapid prototyping. And so a lot of times what we'll build a prototype application that we do, and I will have Claude Code help me get up a whole new application. And usually the process by which I do that is I'll first go create a new GitHub repo. I'll pull down the repo, it's empty, and then I'll basically work with Claude Code, and I'll tell it like, hey, I need a web application, and maybe it's a insurance finance thing that I need to do, and say, hey, I'm building this for an insurance finance company. I need to, I would probably give them information about the company, I would also identify what the personas are. I would identify what the major features are that I need it to be. I would then tell it like, okay, what is the tech stack that I'm trying to build it in? And then a lot of times what I do is I give it I have a project template that I have set up that I reference as like, hey, I want you to structure the application in this way. And so I will tell it to go, hey, there's a GitHub repo out there called Travis Smith v1/project template. Go look at that URL for an example of how to structure the application. And I will use that and tell Claude Code, like, go set up me an application this way. And I would do the same thing if I was either doing a rapid prototype or if I was building a real application that we were going to be starting off for being deployed to a QA environment for a real application. The only difference is that with the real application, I would use Claude Code and be like, hey, I also want to set up infrastructure, automated testing. If it's, for example, if it needs to be HIPAA compliant, I would be focusing on that. There's a lot of information that I would give it, and I would probably have a long prompt. But to answer your question, yes, I've done that a few different times now. It's a very powerful thing. It gets me going pretty quickly, and because of the preferences that I've done a lot of work to set up, I don't typically run into a lot of issues. I can get full-blown applications up and running in less than 8 hours on a pretty regular basis. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks everyone. I hope that this is a good example for you of how to use Claude Code to some extent to accelerate these things. There's a lot that you can get done quickly. I would say that I did this in an hour. If I was going to do this in a little more step-by-step, make sure it was done, and I'd probably spend maybe somewhere between 2 to 3 hours on this. But still, there was a time period where I could go set up Terraform infrastructure, and just getting the infrastructure set up would take me probably a couple days. So if I can do this in a couple hours, then it's well worth it for me. Thank you.